A single mother lived next door to me for 8 years. My husband couldn't stand her. He even built a 12-foot iron fence and said she was a dangerous psychopath. When she passed away in the pouring rain, I was the only one who attended her funeral. Her lawyer handed me a highly confidential envelope, and I was completely shattered by what I read about the crimes of the husband I shared a bed with. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Before we dive in, drop a comment. What are you doing right now while you listen, driving, working, or just taking a quiet moment? I read every single comment. Just so you know, some elements in this story have been fictionalized to highlight the lesson, but what matters most is the message it carries. I stood alone at a funeral for a woman I'd been told to fear for 10 years, and when the lawyer handed me the envelope, I realized everything my husband had said was a lie. The rain came down in sheets at Cedar Hill Cemetery that Tuesday morning. The casket cheap pine, no flowers, was already being lowered into the ground. No mourners, no minister. Just me and the woman in the expensive suit walking toward me through the mud. Ms. Ashford. She extended her hand. I'm Helena Lockwood, attorney for Stellan Whitfield's estate. Attorney Helena Lockwood was 51 with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many funerals. She'd prepared Stellan's will 2 years ago, and now stood in the rain with an envelope Stellan had entrusted to her. I shook her hand, confused. I don't understand. I didn't even know her. She left this for you. Helena pulled a manila envelope from her jacket. My name was handwritten across the front, Larissa Ashford. Asked me to deliver it personally after her passing. Stellan Whitfield had been my neighbor for 8 years. The woman behind the 12-foot iron fence my husband Corbin built 3 months after she moved in. 35 years old, worked 2 jobs to raise her son alone. I'd seen her maybe 5 times total, always through gaps in that fence. We never even spoke, I said. My husband told me to keep my distance. Something flickered in Helena's eyes. She said you'd understand once you read it. Don't wait too long. She walked away, leaving me with an envelope that suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The cemetery workers finished lowering the casket. No one said goodbye. Stellan Whitfield, who'd worked 2 jobs for 8 years to raise Stellan, her mute 8-year-old son, alone behind that fence, went into the ground with no witnesses except the woman her neighbor's husband had warned away. I should have opened it in the car, should have torn it open right there in the rain. But some part of me already knew once I read what was inside, my life would never be the same. At 30, I'd been married to Corbin Ashford for 10 years. We lived in a comfortable 2-story in Hartford, me working from home as a freelance graphic designer, him climbing the ladder as regional marketing director. Our life was built on honesty, he always said. That night I sat alone in our kitchen at 11:47 p.m., doors locked, lights off except the single lamp. Corbin was in Boston on business. He traveled constantly. The envelope opened easily. Inside 9 handwritten pages, a stack of documents, and 1 small sealed envelope labeled DNA test results. My hands shook as I unfolded the first page. Dear Larissa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry you have to learn the truth like this, but there's no one else I can trust. 10 years ago, I met your husband. We fell in love. I read that line 3 times. When I told him I was pregnant, everything changed. He vanished for 3 months. Wouldn't answer calls, blocked. My number disappeared. Then I saw the wedding announcement. Corbin Ashford married Larissa Mercer. 3 months after I told him about the baby. My vision blurred. I set the letter down, counted to 10, picked it back up. I gave birth alone. Named him Stellan. He was born without speech, selective mutism, the doctors say. He communicates through crayon drawings and bracelets he weaves from colored thread. 36 of them so far, 1 for every birthday I'll never have. 36. Stellan had been 35 when she died. When Stellan was 4 months old, Corbin showed up at my door. Not to apologize, not to meet his son, to tell me his wife you could never know, that he'd pay me to stay quiet. I told him to leave. 2 weeks later, I heard construction sounds. Your husband was building a fence, 12 feet high, iron bars, so you'd never see his son's face. The kitchen went quiet. Rain whispered against the window. I'd asked Corbin about that fence once. He'd said it was for privacy, protection. The neighbor had issues. I lived behind that fence for 8 years, Larissa. Watched you through the gaps. Wanted to tell you 1,000 times. But I had Stellan to protect, and your husband made it clear if I spoke I'd lose everything. He had lawyers, money, connections. I had a mute 8-year-old and 2 minimum wage jobs. But I'm dying now. Medication complications, the doctors say, though I've been healthy until 6 months ago. Until I refused Corbin's latest check. Until I told him I was considering going public. I'm not paranoid. I'm a realist. And I'm leaving you this letter because you deserve to know who you're married to. The documents are in the envelope. The DNA test I paid for 2 years ago when I started getting sick. Corbin's coffee cup from a cafe. Stellan's cheek swab. The results are clear. My hands stopped shaking. The kitchen went very quiet. The only sound was rain against the window and the whisper of paper as I unfolded the DNA results. Clinical white paper, official letterhead, numbers that didn't lie. Probability of paternity 99.99%. Stellan Whitfield, 8 years old, born without speech, who communicated through crayon drawings and hand-woven bracelets, who I'd seen only through gaps in the fence Corbin built, was my husband's son. The mute child, the dangerous neighbor's boy, the reason for the 12-foot barrier. Not dangerous, just evidence. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Corbin Ashford, 38, who'd worked his way up through charm and carefully constructed lies, had a son he'd hidden from me for 8 years. A son he'd built a fence to erase. But that wasn't the end of Stellan's letter. I turned to page 2 and the words froze my blood. But that's not Corbin's only crime. Page 2 began with 3 words that made 10 years of my marriage collapse. The fence was mine. I stared at Stellan's handwriting until the letters blurred and reformed and blurred again. I read the sentence 4 times. Then I kept reading because stopping felt more dangerous than knowing. The fence wasn't to protect you, Larissa. It was to hide my son's face. Stellan looks exactly like his father. Same eyes, same jawline, same left eyebrow that lifts when he's confused. Anyone who saw him would know immediately. So Corbin built a barrier, 12 feet of iron, and he used your money to do it. My stomach dropped the way it does in an elevator that falls too fast, that hollow, sickening plunge where your body understands something before your mind catches up. September 2017. You signed the permit yourself. Account number 44778832. Your father's inheritance, the one he left you when he died that spring. Corbin told you I was dangerous, that I'd been harassing him, making threats. It was a lie. I'd never spoken to you, never approached your house. The entire story was fabricated so you'd approve the construction. I remembered that day. The memory came back with the particular sharpness of things we wish we could forget. It was early autumn. Corbin had come home from work looking shaken pale in a way I had never seen before. His composure fractured just enough to seem genuine. He said the woman next door had been following him for months. Said she had shown up at his office just standing in the lobby staring at him. When security asked her to leave, she ran. He had shown me something, a piece of paper with what looked like angry scrawled handwriting. I had looked at it for maybe 4 seconds. I hadn't questioned where it came from or why the handwriting looked so unfamiliar. I had believed him because I had always believed him. That was what our marriage was built on, or what I thought it was built on. I had signed the permit at the kitchen table. $18,000 from my father's account. For our safety, Corbin had said, and the words had landed so gently, so reasonably, that I had picked up the pen without hesitation. The receipt is in the envelope. Look at it. Account 4477-8832. Your signature, your money. You paid to imprison us. Oh. With shaking hands, I pulled the documents from the envelope and spread them across the table. Bank receipt. September 14th, 2017. My signature at the bottom. My father's inheritance account, the money he had saved his entire working life, the money he told me was for building something real, something that mattered. $18,000 transferred to Ashford Construction, LLC. I had paid for it. Every bar, every bolt, every inch of metal that kept Stellan, my husband's son, pressed against the boundary of his own existence, invisible to the world on the other side of a wall I had funded. I helped him, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I signed the paper. I locked them in. The guilt hit first, crushing, and complete, the kind that doesn't ask for context, that simply arrives and sits on your chest until you can't breathe. Then slowly something else began to rise beneath it, white hot and very clean. But the fence wasn't even the root of it, Larissa. The fence was just one more lie built on top of the original crime, the one that started everything. I turned the page. My hands had stopped shaking. Something cold and deliberate had settled in my chest, replacing the panic with something harder, something that felt uncomfortably like clarity. August 15th, 2012. Your husband was 24 years old and drunk. He hit a man on Elm Street at 11:43 p.m. Nathan Sterling, 42, walking home from his evening shift at the factory. Nathan left behind a wife and 3 children. Corbin drove away without stopping. The words swam. I set the page down, pressed both palms flat against the table, breathed. Then I read it again. He told me about it 3 months later, after we'd started dating. Confessed one night when he was drunk again, crying, saying it was an accident, that he'd panicked. I didn't know what to do. I was pregnant, scared, alone. He begged me not to tell anyone. Said he'd make it right someday. Said he loved me. Then he vanished. But before he disappeared, he took care of the evidence. The next morning, August 16th, 2012, at 6:15 a.m., he withdrew $8,000 from your account. Here's the receipt. Account 4477-8832, your signature. Or something close enough that no one would question it. My vision tunneled to a single point. I fumbled through the documents with fingers that had gone numb and found it near the bottom of the stack. Bank withdrawal slip. August 16th, 2012. $8,000 cash. The account number matched perfectly my inheritance account, the one my father had opened for me on my 18th birthday, the one he said was for emergencies, for futures, for the kind of life he hadn't been able to build for himself. The signature looked like mine, almost exactly. The capital L in Larissa slanted at the wrong angle. The loop in the A was just slightly too wide. Small imperfections that anyone glancing casually would never catch. Imperfections that only I would recognize because I had signed my own name 10,000 times, and I knew exactly how my hand moved. Forged, I breathed. The word fell into the empty kitchen and just sat there. He used that money to pay Wesley Sutton, 41, who ran an underground auto shop in Hartford's industrial district. Wesley destroyed the car that same day, crushed it, melted it, erased every trace of the damage. I know because Wesley told me years later, drunk at a bar bragging about the job he'd done for some rich kid who'd hit a guy and needed it to disappear. How many times had I looked at that fence and felt safe? How many mornings had I carried coffee to the kitchen window and looked at those iron bars and thought, we made the right call? How many nights had I slept peacefully, genuinely, deeply, peacefully, while a woman and her child lived in fear and poverty on the other side of a wall? I had signed into existence a wall built with money my father had spent 30 years saving money, that had also helped erase the evidence of a man's death. Nathan Sterling, 42 years old, walking home from a factory shift because that was what he did. That was how he lived, that was what he left his family every evening to do. 3 children who woke up the next morning without a father. A wife who had to keep going anyway because children don't stop needing things just because the world falls apart. The kitchen clock read 1:47 a.m. The house was silent, except for rain against glass, and the sound of my own breathing, which had gone too fast and too shallow without me noticing. I kept reading. I didn't tell the police back then, Larissa. I was pregnant, terrified, and Corbin had already proven he could make anyone who threatened him simply disappear from his life without consequence. But I kept records, dates, receipts. Wesley's bar confession recorded on my phone from across the table while he bragged and drank. The original newspaper article about Nathan Sterling's unsolved hit and run. The family still waiting for answers, still listed in the crime database under open cases, still hoping. I kept it all. And when Stellan turned 6 and started drawing pictures of things he had seen, things he couldn't describe in words because words had never come easily to him, I understood something new. I understood that Corbin was capable of worse than abandonment, worse than silence, worse than lies. So I gathered more evidence, quietly, carefully, for 2 years. Everything is in this envelope. Copies of everything. The originals are with my lawyer in a safety deposit box, with one instruction: if I die unexpectedly, open immediately. Because 6 months ago, when I told your husband I was done accepting his money in exchange for my silence, when I said I was considering telling you the truth, everything changed. The payment stopped, and I started getting sick. My hands went numb. The receipt slipped from my fingers and floated down to the kitchen table with a softness that felt obscene given what it represented. A piece of paper, a forged signature, $8,000 in cash paid to a man who crushed evidence of a killing and called it a job well done. A crime scene. I was sitting in the middle of a crime scene that had been assembled around me over 12 years, piece by piece, and I had never once seen it. The doctors say medication complications, but I have been healthy my entire life, Larissa. I never had problems with any prescription until Corbin started arranging to have them delivered to my house through a pharmacy service he set up. Free of charge, he said. For Stellan's sake, he said, as though he had ever done a single thing for Stellan's sake. I cannot prove it. Not yet. But I'm not stupid, and I'm not paranoid. I am just a woman who knows too much about a man who has already killed once to protect himself, and who has now been given a very good reason to do it again. The letter continued, but I could not read any more. Not yet. My body had reached some kind of limit, some point where information stops being processed and becomes instead a physical weight. I pushed back from the table, stood up on legs that shook, and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the iron fence cut through our shared yard, like a scar. 12 feet of metal that I had paid for, approved, thanked him for, pointed at when friends visited, and said we finally got some privacy. I had felt grateful for it. I had told my sister it made me feel safer. I had stood at this same window 100 times and looked at those bars and felt nothing except mild domestic satisfaction. In the darkness, I could see the shape of it clearly. Solid, permanent, not protection. A prison, built with my money, built with my signature, built with my trust, which had been the cheapest thing of all to steal. I looked down at page 3, still unread, on the table. In the low lamplight, one sentence was visible at the very top of the page, written in the same careful hand as everything that had come before, the hand of a woman who had known she was dying and had chosen to spend her remaining strength on the truth. But the fence wasn't the worst thing he did. I sat back down. I picked up the page. Outside, the rain kept falling against the window, patient and indifferent the way rain always is. The clock on the wall ticked forward into the small hours of a morning that had already changed everything, still ticking toward whatever came next. I read on. I remembered the day I signed the permit, September 2017, standing in our yard with a pen in my hand and Corbin's lies in my ear. The memory pulled me back 7 years, sharp and unwanted. It was early autumn. I'd been married to Corbin for 3 years, still believing marriage meant partnership, truth, safety. The yard was green and open back then, stretching between our house and the neighbors with nothing but grass and possibility. Corbin had come home from work looking shaken, pale. Said the woman next door had been following him for months. She showed up at my office yesterday. He'd told me, pacing the kitchen. Just standing in the lobby, staring. When security asked what she wanted, she ran. That's terrifying, I'd said, believing him. Have you called the police? They can't do anything until she makes a direct threat. But I can't live like this, Larissa. We can't. I need you to trust me on this. A fence is the only way to keep us safe. The construction workers had arrived 2 days later. I'd stood in the yard that September morning, watching them dig post holes, and Corbin had handed me the permit. 12 feet seems extreme, I'd said, staring at the plans. Are you sure she's that dangerous? His face had crumpled, actual tears. She's unstable, obsessed. Please, I need you to sign this. For us. So I'd signed. My name, my father's inheritance money, my approval to build a prison. The workers had sunk the first post into concrete that afternoon. I'd watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, feeling safe, protected. The metal bars went up one by one, cutting the yard in half. Then I'd heard it, a baby's cry from the other side. Sharp, desperate, the kind of sound that makes every human instinct scream respond. I'd moved toward the fence, toward the crying, but Corbin had appeared beside me instantly, his hand on my arm, tight. "Don't," he'd said. The baby kept crying. "Corbin, there's a child. Don't engage, that's what she wants." His grip tightened. "Come inside, now." I'd obeyed, walked away from the crying, let the kitchen door close behind me, and the sound fade. That baby had been Stellan, 1 year old, my husband's son, and I'd walked away. The memory dissolved. I was back in my kitchen at 2:40 in the morning, holding a letter from a dead woman, and I couldn't breathe. I forced my eyes back to page 3, to the paragraph I'd been too shaken to read. The worst thing wasn't the fence, Larissa. It was what the fence represented. It was that you believed him, that I had to watch you stand in your yard signing the permit, approving the cage, thinking you were the victim. But I need you to understand something. I wasn't stalking your husband. I found the house listing in July 2016. When I saw the address was next door to his, I used every dollar I'd saved for the down payment. Not to stalk him, Larissa. To give my son a father, even one who would never claim him. I wanted Stellan to grow up breathing the same air. To hear Corbin's voice through the fence. To see his shadow in the driveway. To know his father existed even if he'd never say the word dad. I knew Corbin would never acknowledge him. Knew he'd do everything to hide us. But I couldn't take Stellan away from the only connection to his father he'd ever have. Even a distant one. Even a cruel one. So I bought the house, moved in with a newborn, and a dream that maybe someday Corbin would look through a gap in whatever barrier he built and see his son's face and change. He never did. My throat closed. I kept reading. For 8 years, I paid lawyers to defend myself against harassment accusations that were lies. Restraining order petitions I had to fight in court, $12,000 in legal fees I didn't have. I took second jobs, sold everything that wasn't essential. Lived in fear every single day. Because I wanted Stellan to hear Corbin's voice through the fence when he left for work in the morning. To see his car in the driveway. To watch his father's shadow move past the windows at night, and know even if he couldn't speak, even if he'd never be claimed, that his father was real. I gave my son 8 years of proximity to a man who built a 12-foot wall to erase him, and you helped him do it. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Larissa. I'm telling you because you need to know what kind of man you're married to. The kind who would make his own child live in a cage. The kind who would make you the warden and convince you it was for your own safety. The words blurred. I set the letter down, pressed my palms against the kitchen table, felt the wood solid beneath my hands. Stellan had sacrificed everything. Her savings, her peace. 8 years of fear and legal battles and second jobs and isolation. All so her mute son could exist within earshot of a father who refused to acknowledge him. And I'd helped Corbin cage her. She sacrificed everything, I whispered to the empty kitchen, and I helped him cage her. What kind of love makes a woman spend 8 years behind a fence paying lawyers to prove she isn't crazy, just so her child can hear his father's footsteps on the other side? What kind of desperation drives a mother to accept persecution as the price of proximity? I turned to page 4, my hands steadier now, my shock hardening into something colder. The next paragraph began. "But there's something you don't know about the bracelets in your jewelry box." I froze. My jewelry box sat on the dresser upstairs. I'd had it since college, filled with old earrings and tangled necklaces I never wore. Cheap costume pieces, things I'd collected over the years and forgotten. I'd never seen any bracelets. I took the stairs 2 at a time, the letter still clutched in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. The bedroom was dark. 3:07 in the morning. I flipped the light switch and went straight to the dresser, where my wooden jewelry box sat exactly where it had been for a decade, collecting dust, holding forgotten things. I lifted the lid, the hinges creaked. Inside, tangled silver necklaces I never wore, cheap earrings from college, a broken watch, the usual debris of a life half-lived. I dug beneath the tangled fingers, searching, and then I felt them. Small, soft, woven. I pulled out the first one, red thread, carefully braided about 3 inches long. Then another. Blue, then yellow, green, purple, orange. I kept pulling them out one after another, laying them on the dresser in a growing line of color. 36 small bracelets, each one woven from colored thread. I stared at them. I'd seen these before. For years I'd been finding them in the yard near the fence, caught in the grass. I'd picked them up while gardening, thought they were pretty trash the wind had blown over, tossed them into the jewelry box without a second thought. Pretty junk. I grabbed the letter, hands shaking, and found the paragraph on page 4. Stellan started making bracelets when he was 3 years old. Every week for 5 years, he braided a new one from thread I bought at the craft store. Red, blue, yellow, green, purple, orange, the brightest colors he could find. He'd push them through the gaps in the fence where the metal had rusted at ground level, hoping you'd find them. Hoping you'd know someone on the other side was thinking of you. You did find them, Larissa. You picked them up while gardening, tossed them in your jewelry box, thought they were pretty trash. You kept 36 handmade gifts from a child you were told to fear. You kept every single one, but you never knew what they were. You never knew he was reaching for you. He was 3 years old, I whispered, touching the red bracelet. Reaching for me, and I threw him away like garbage. I spread all 36 across my bed, a rainbow of thread, each one slightly different. Some were tight and even the braiding precise. Others were loose and crooked where small fingers had struggled with the technique. 5 years of hope lined up on my comforter like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what this was. Evidence. Of a child's loneliness. Of my blindness. I picked up the first red one again, ran my thumb over the braiding. The memory hit without warning. May 2019. Afternoon. I'd been kneeling in the garden near the fence, pulling weeds from the flower bed. The fence had gaps at ground level where the metal had rusted through small holes maybe 2 inches wide, just large enough for something small to fit through. I'd seen movement through one of the gaps. A child. 3 years old, maybe 4. Dark curls, big eyes, sitting alone in the dirt on the other side of the fence. He'd watched me through the gap, silent, and then carefully, so carefully, he'd pushed something through the rusted hole. A bracelet, red thread clumsily braided. I'd picked it up, smiled at it. Cute little bracelet, I'd said to myself. Wonder where that came from. I'd pocketed it without looking back at the gap, without looking at the child's face, without speaking to him. From the house, Corbin had called, "Larissa, dinner's ready, come inside." And I'd stood, brushed the dirt from my knees, walked away, obeying the standing rule. Don't engage. Don't make contact. The neighbor's child is not your concern. I'd gone inside for dinner and tossed the red bracelet into my jewelry box that night, already half forgotten. The memory dissolved. I was back in my bedroom at 3 in the morning holding the same red bracelet, and I wanted to scream. That was the first one, I said to the empty room. May 2019. I smiled at it like it was litter. I never looked at his face. I never said a word. A 3-year-old child had sat in the dirt braiding thread, with fingers too small for the work, pushing his creation through a gap in the metal, hoping for connection, for acknowledgement, for anything. And I'd walked away to dinner. How many times had that child sat on the other side braiding thread with hands too small for the work, hoping the woman in the garden would see him, speak to him, love him? How many weeks had he waited for me to push a bracelet back through the gap, to whisper a kind word to show him he wasn't invisible? 36 bracelets, 5 years. I counted them again to be sure. Laid them out in rows on the bed, organized by color, by tightness of braid, by the progression from clumsy to skilled, as Stellan's hands had grown. 36. Something bothered me. The math felt wrong. 5 years, roughly 1 bracelet every 3 weeks if he'd made them consistently. That would be... I grabbed the letter again, scanned page 5 where Stellan had written about the bracelets in detail. My breath caught. Stellan made 37 bracelets total, Larissa. 1 every few weeks from age 3 to age 8. 36 of them he pushed through the fence for you. You have them all. I watched you collect every single one over the years, never realizing what they meant. But the 37th bracelet is different. That one he's saving to give you himself, face to face, when the fence finally comes down. He's been waiting 5 years to meet you, to put the last bracelet in your hand and see if you'll finally look at him, finally see him. I'm writing this letter because I won't be here when that happens, but I need you to know, when you meet my son, when he offers you that 37th bracelet, please don't turn away. He's waited his whole life for you to say one kind word. I sank onto the bed, surrounded by 36 tiny bracelets, and the weight of what I'd done crushed the air from my lungs. Somewhere an 8-year-old boy who couldn't speak was holding the 37th bracelet, waiting, still hoping, and his mother was dead. Page 6 of the letter began. 4 weeks ago, I tried to warn you in person. And suddenly, I was back in the supermarket dairy aisle, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, Stellan's desperate face inches from mine. Late February, Hartford suburban supermarket. I'd been reaching for yogurt when someone grabbed my arm. I'd spun around, startled. Stellan. Thinner than I'd expected. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd looked exhausted and terrified and desperate all at once. "Please," she'd whispered, her grip tight on my arm. "Someone is going to kill me and my son. You need to know the truth about Corbin before they—" Panic had flooded my chest. This was the dangerous neighbor, the unstable woman, the one Corbin had warned me about for 8 years. "Let go of me," I'd said, pulling back. "I don't know what you want, but my husband warned me about you. Please just leave us alone." Her face had crumpled. "Larissa, please, I have proof. Everything he's done. The hit and run in 2012, the money he stole from you, the fence." "You're not well," I'd interrupted, backing toward the checkout. "You need help, but not from me." I'd left my cart where it stood and walked out of the store, hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my car. Driven home 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, locked the doors the moment I was inside. Corbin had come home from work 2 hours later, and I'd told him everything. He'd listened quietly, then nodded. "See?" He'd said, his voice so calm, so reasonable. "I told you she wasn't normal. She's been obsessed for years. Now she's escalating, making up stories, trying to turn you against me." "She seems so desperate," I'd said. "That's how delusion works, honey. She believes her own lies." He'd taken my hand, squeezed it gently. "Next time she approaches you, call the police immediately. This is harassment. Promise me." "I promise." 2 weeks later, Stellan was dead. Car accident, the news report said. Brake failure. Vehicle left the road at high speed, single-car collision, no survivors. I'd seen the notice in the Hartford Courant and felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that the unstable neighbor was gone. Guilt for feeling relieved. Corbin had held me that night while I cried for a woman I'd never known. "It's not your fault," he'd whispered. "You tried to help by walking away. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let troubled people face their own consequences." And I'd believed him one final time. The memory dissolved. I was back in my kitchen, dawn creeping through the windows, 9 pages of a dead woman's letter spread across the table. And I understood I'd helped him kill her. Not with my hands, but with my silence, my trust, my willful blindness. She'd reached for me in that supermarket dairy aisle, and I'd chosen my husband's lie over her truth. 2 weeks later, she was dead. I grabbed page 9 with shaking hands. The final page, Stellan's last words. "If you're reading this, I'm gone." My accident wasn't an accident. The words hit like a fist to the chest. 3 days before I died, I came home to find someone near my car in the driveway. It was dark. I couldn't make out who. They ran when my headlights hit them. The next morning, I took my car to a mechanic I trusted. He found nothing wrong, but I knew. I felt it. 2 days later, my brakes failed on the highway. They'll say it was mechanical failure. Age of the vehicle. Poor maintenance. But I know better. The brakes were disabled before I left the house that morning, Larissa. Someone wanted me dead before you could hear the truth. Don't trust anyone in that house, not anyone. My eyes lifted from the page. The kitchen counter was 3 feet away. Gray dawn light filtered through the window, illuminating the small amber prescription bottle sitting exactly where I'd left it last night. "Larissa Ashford, heart medication. Take 1 daily." My heart medication. I'd been taking it every night for 3 months, since December. Prescribed by our family doctor. Filled at the pharmacy Corbin always went to. 1 pill every night at 10 o'clock. Corbin always brought me water. I picked up the letter again, my hands numb, and read the final paragraph. "Protect my son. He's all I have. He's staying with emergency foster care now because I have no family, no one to take him if something happens to me. But he deserves better than the system. He deserves someone who will see him, speak to him, love him. And remember, Larissa, some medicines only harm you when someone wants them to." The prescription bottle sat on the counter. Amber plastic, white label. 30 pills inside, 17 already gone. I'd been taking them every night since December. Since I'd started having the chest pains. Since Corbin had insisted I see our family doctor. Since the doctor had written the prescription and Corbin had picked it up from the pharmacy himself, brought it home, handed it to me with concern in his eyes. "You have to take these, honey," he'd said. "Heart disease runs in your family. Your father died at 52. We can't take risks." And every night since then he'd brought me water at exactly 10 o'clock, watched me swallow the pill, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me. Some medicines only harm you when someone wants them to. Stellan's brakes had been disabled. 2 days later, she was dead. I'd been taking medication Corbin controlled for 3 months. The letter's final line burned in my mind. "Don't trust anyone in that house." My hand stopped in midair, frozen halfway between the final page of Stellan's letter and the amber prescription bottle on the counter. Outside, dawn broke over Hartford, turning the sky from black to gray. I was alone in the house, with medicine I'd been taking every night, and a husband who'd already killed once. At 7:32 Wednesday morning, I called my husband and told him to come home immediately. And when he walked through the door 20 minutes later, I had every piece of Stellan's evidence spread across the living room floor. The 9-page letter, the DNA test results, the bank receipts, the newspaper clipping about Nathan Sterling's unsolved hit-and-run, the fence construction permit with my signature, the 36 bracelets arranged in a rainbow across the coffee table. Corbin stopped in the doorway, looked at the evidence, looked at me. "I see," he said. "Not what is this not, I can explain, just I see." Like he'd been expecting this day for years. "Stellan is your son," I said. My voice was steady, cold. "You got Stellan pregnant 10 years ago, then vanished and married me 3 months later. You built that fence with my inheritance money to hide him, to hide your own child like he was garbage." Corbin walked to the armchair, sat down, crossed his legs. Calm, comfortable. "Go on," he said. "Nathan Sterling died because you were drunk and hit him with your car on August 15, 2012. You took money from my account, $8,000, to pay Wesley Sutton to destroy the evidence. You forged my signature." He tilted his head slightly. "Anything else?" "Stellan," my voice cracked. "Her brakes were cut. She knew someone was near her car 2 nights before the accident. Someone who wanted her silent before she could tell me the truth." I waited for denial, for anger, for some desperate attempt to lie his way out. Instead, Corbin laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not forced. A genuine laugh, like I'd told a joke only he understood. "You've been busy," he said. "Reading dead women's letters, connecting dots, very thorough. I'm actually impressed." "You're not going to deny it." "Why would I?" He leaned back in the chair. "Nathan Sterling was an accident. I was young, drunk, stupid, panicked, and ran. Yes, I used your inheritance to pay Wesley. Yes, I married you because you had money and stability and you asked no questions. Yes, I built the fence to keep Stellan out of sight." He said it like he was listing groceries. No shame, no guilt. I waited for something human to surface, some flicker of the man I'd married 10 years ago. Instead, he smiled. Actually smiled. "And Stellan?" I whispered. "Stellan was a problem that solved itself," he said. "Whether her brakes failed naturally or with help, does it really matter? She's gone. The problem is gone." My blood turned to ice. "You're a monster." "I'm a pragmatist." He stood up, walked to the coffee table, picked up one of the bank receipts. "But let's talk about what really matters here, Larissa. This account that paid Wesley Sutton. Account 4477-8832. He held up the withdrawal slip, my signature at the bottom. "Your inheritance account," he said. "Your name, your signature, or close enough that no court would question it. $8,000 withdrawn in cash, paid to a mechanic who destroyed evidence of a fatal hit-and-run." I stared at him. "You go to the police with this," he continued, voice perfectly calm, "and they see your account funded the cover-up. Your signature authorized the withdrawal, under the law that makes you an accessory after the fact to vehicular manslaughter. You forged my signature. Prove it." He smiled. "We're married. Your assets are my assets. Joint accounts, shared finances. Any prosecutor will see a wife who knew about the accident and helped her husband cover it up. You become complicit in everything, Larissa." The trap closed around me. "We go down together," he said softly, "or we both walk away. Your choice." I looked at the evidence spread across my living room. Every piece of it tied back to my inheritance account. My name. My money used to build a fence, destroy a car, cover up a death. I didn't know, I said. But you benefited. He gestured around the room. This house, this life, 10 years of comfort funded by money that paid off a hit and run. You think any jury will believe you had no idea that you were just an innocent victim. The trap was perfect, elegant. He'd built it the day he forged my signature in 2012, and I'd been living inside it for 12 years without knowing. So what now? I asked. He straightened his tie. Now you put all this back in whatever box you found it in. We never speak of it again. Stellan stays in foster care where he belongs. You keep taking your medication like a good wife. And we go on living our comfortable life. And if I refuse, then we both go to prison. He checked his watch. I have a meeting at 9. Are we done here? I looked at him. Really looked at him and saw nothing. No love, no guilt, no humanity. Just calculation. Just a man who'd killed twice and was threatening to destroy me if I didn't help him hide it. Yes, I said quietly, we're done. He nodded, turned toward the door. Corbin. He stopped. I stood up, walked past him, opened the front door wide. Get out of this house right now. He stared at me, calculating. You don't want to make an enemy of me, Larissa. I held the door wider. I said get out. For a long moment we stood there. Then he walked through the door without another word. I closed it behind him, locked it, leaned against the wood and felt my hands start to shake. The living room floor was still covered in evidence that could destroy us both. Corbin's car started outside, the engine fading as he drove away. I was alone in the house, alone with the truth, alone with a legal trap that made me complicit in crimes I'd never known existed. And standing there in the silence, I realized something. I'd just declared war on a man who'd already killed twice. The house felt different after he left, not safer but emptier, like a trap with the predator temporarily gone. Wednesday evening, 6:47. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by Stellan's evidence, trying to think through options. If I called the police now, they'd investigate. They'd see my inheritance account funded the cover-up of a fatal hit and run. Corbin would claim I knew about it all along, that we were partners. My account, my signature, my money. I'd be arrested alongside him, or he'd flee before they could build a case, and I'd be left holding the legal consequences alone. I needed evidence that didn't implicate me, something that proved his guilt without dragging me down with him. My eyes drifted to the kitchen counter. The amber medication bottle sat exactly where I'd left it that morning. Larissa Ashford, heart medication. Take 1 tablet daily at bedtime. I'd been taking it every night for 3 months. Since December. Every night at 10 o'clock, Corbin would bring me water, watch me swallow the pill, kiss my forehead. Stellan's warning whispered in my mind. Some medicines only harm you when someone wants them to. I stood up, walked to the counter, picked up the bottle. 17 pills left. 13 already inside my body over the past weeks. If they were trying to kill me slowly, stopping now might not be enough, but continuing was suicide. I opened the bottle, walked to the sink and poured every pill down the drain, turned on the garbage disposal, watched them disappear. At 8:33 my phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. You know, don't do anything foolish. I stared at the screen. 7 words, no signature, no elaboration. They were watching. They knew I'd confronted Corbin. They knew I had Stellan's letter. And they were warning me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow through the window looked like someone watching. I kept the lights off, sat in darkness, and waited. By dawn, I'd made my decision. If they wanted me dead, they'd hidden the weapon in plain sight. The medication, the nightly routine, the gentle concern masking slow poison. But I needed proof. Something beyond Stellan's letter and my suspicions. At 7:18 Thursday morning, I went to the garage and found a crowbar. Corbin's second-floor office had been locked for 2 years. He'd installed the lock himself, told me it was for work files, confidential client information he couldn't risk me seeing accidentally. I'd believed him, trusted him, never questioned why my husband needed a locked room in our own house. The crowbar fit between the door and the frame. One hard pull and the lock splintered. The office was small, desk, filing cabinet, laptop closed on the surface. I opened the filing cabinet. Inside, stacks of paper, bank statements, property deeds. And beneath those, a bundle of letters tied with string handwritten on expensive stationery. I untied the string with shaking hands. The first letter was dated January 2022. See, When you have enough signatures for the property transfer, we can finally leave Hartford. 2 more months of this charade. The inheritance accounts are nearly drained to offshore. After that, we're free. I flipped to the next one. June 2023. The woman next door is escalating. Deal with her first, she's becoming a liability. Make it look organic. After that, we handle L. My hands went numb. October 2023, same handwriting. C. Property transfer complete. Accounts established in Cayman as discussed. L still trusts you completely. Medication working as planned, doctor confirmed, prescription filled monthly. No suspicion. Mexico departure set for April 15th, 2024. 6 months. With anticipation, Saskia Sterling Ashford. I stopped breathing. Saskia Sterling Ashford. Sterling Ashford. Ashford was Corbin's surname. He had another wife. Saskia Sterling Ashford. 36 years old, according to the property deed paperwork in the file. Owned a mansion in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Legally married to Corbin 8 years before I'd met him. I wasn't the wife, I was the target. I kept reading, hands trembling so badly the papers rustled. March 10th, 2024. 2 days before Stellan's car accident. C. Done. K's car handled. Brakes clean cut, will fail on first slope above 40 miles per hour. Took care of it myself last night while she was working late shift. Police will rule mechanical failure. Your turn with L's medication. Triple the dosage as we discussed. Heart attack will look natural given family history. Do it this week. Mexico tickets booked April 15th. Once L is gone, the house and all accounts transfer to us as planned. The inheritance money, the life insurance, everything. 7 years of patience, almost done. S. I photographed every letter with my phone. My hands shook so badly some of the pictures came out blurred, but I kept going. Every page, every signature, every piece of evidence that proved this wasn't just Corbin. There were 2 of them. 2 killers, 2 monsters working together. Stellan's brakes hadn't failed naturally. Saskia had cut them herself. 2 days later, Stellan died. And my medication, these pills I'd been taking every night since December, wasn't heart medication. It was poison. Slow, calculated murder disguised as preventive care. The last letter I photographed was dated March 10th, the same day as Saskia's confession about Stellan's brakes. In her handwriting, done. K's brakes handled. Will fail on first slope. Your turn with L's medication, triple the dosage as we discussed. Mexico tickets booked April 15th. Once L is gone, the house and accounts are ours. I lowered my phone, hands trembling. They'd planned to kill me all along. The medication, the inheritance, the marriage itself. Everything was a setup to eliminate me and take my father's money. I was 3 miles from the Connecticut DCF office when my chest locked up and the road started to blur. Thursday morning, 8:42. I'd left the house 15 minutes earlier with my phone in the passenger seat. Every letter photographed, every piece of evidence Saskia had left in Corbin's locked office preserved digitally. I was going to report everything, Stellan's murder, the poisoning, Stellan's abandonment, all of it. Then the pain hit. It started in my sternum, a tightness that spread outward like someone was wrapping steel bands around my ribs. My left arm went numb. Vision doubled, then blurred. The road ahead split into 2 wavering gray ribbons. I yanked the wheel right, trying to reach the shoulder, but my hands shook so violently I could barely hold on. Not now, I gasped. Please, not now. I'm 3 miles away, 3 miles. The chest pain squeezed tighter. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see. My foot slipped off the gas pedal. For 3 seconds, I lost consciousness completely. The car drifted. When my eyes opened again, I was heading straight for the guardrail at 35 miles an hour. I didn't have time to scream. Metal crunched. The airbag exploded into my face. The world went white, then silent. Somewhere distant, a voice. Jesus, hold on, I'm calling 911. Car hit the guardrail. Woman unconscious inside. Yes, airbag deployed. Sirens, getting closer, getting louder. I tried to reach for my phone, the evidence, Stellan can't let them. Then everything went dark. White ceiling tiles, beeping. The antiseptic smell of hospital air. I blinked at fluorescent lights, tried to remember where the road had gone, why I'd stopped driving, whether I'd reached Stellan in time. You're awake. A woman's voice, calm, professional. Try not to move. You have an IV in your left arm. I turned my head slowly. A doctor stood beside the bed, mid-40s. Dark hair pulled back, ID badge that read, Dr. Margaret Brennan, Emergency Toxicology. She'd worked at Hartford Hospital for 18 years and recognized deliberate poisoning when she saw it. "What time is it?" My voice came out cracked. 10:47, Thursday morning. You've been here about 90 minutes. You crashed your car on Route 44 guardrail impact airbag deployment. Minor contusions. But that's not what concerned us. She pulled up a chair, sat down, looked at me with the kind of direct eye contact that meant bad news. "Your blood work shows dangerously elevated levels of cardiac glycosides," she said. 5.5 times the therapeutic dose. "This didn't happen from one pill, Mrs. Ashford. This is 3 months of cumulative poisoning." I tried to sit up. She put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I stopped taking them," I whispered. "Last night, just one night. How am I still—" "The half-life is 36 hours. It accumulates in your system over time. One night saved you, but you've been poisoned for months. Another week at this dosage, you'd have had a massive stroke." The beeping monitor beside me seemed louder suddenly, each beep a reminder that I was still alive when I shouldn't be. "We pulled the pills from your purse," Dr. Brennan continued. "The ones in the amber bottle. Had them analyzed in our lab." She held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside 3 white tablets. "These are double-strength cardiac medication disguised as normal dose. Someone switched your prescription. Someone who wanted you to think you were taking 1 milligram when you were actually taking 2.2 milligrams every single night." My throat closed. "Who had access to your medication?" she asked. "My husband." She nodded slowly. "We contacted building security at your residence as part of the investigation. Your home has hallway cameras standard in newer Hartford construction. They reviewed footage from the past week." She pulled out a tablet, pulled up a video file, turned the screen toward me. Timestamp Monday, March 11th, 9:15 p.m. The hallway outside our bedroom bathroom. Corbin walked into frame, glanced back toward the stairs, then entered the bathroom. The door closed behind him. 4 minutes passed on the timestamp. The door opened. Corbin emerged, walked back down the hallway, disappeared from frame. "Monday night," I whispered. 9:15 p.m., 4 minutes in my bathroom. I'd been downstairs watching television. Hadn't heard him go up. He'd walked past me an hour later, kissed my forehead, said goodnight. "Direct video evidence of tampering," Dr. Brennan said quietly. "Time-stamped, recorded, irrefutable." She set the tablet aside. "Mrs. Ashford, this isn't a medical emergency anymore. This is attempted murder. I've already contacted Hartford Police. They'll want a statement when you're ready." I closed my eyes. 3 months of poison. 3 months of Corbin bringing me water at 10 o'clock every night, watching me swallow the pills, telling me he loved me. 3 months of Saskia's plan working exactly as designed, until I'd poured the pills down the drain Wednesday night. One decision that saved my life. "There's someone here to see you," Dr. Brennan said. "He's been waiting since the ambulance brought you in. Says he's family." "I don't have any family," I said. "My father died 5 years ago. No siblings, no one." "He has your father's last name, Mercer. Says he's your uncle." "My father had a brother, Desmond." I'd met him once at my father's funeral, brief conversation, exchanged numbers I'd never called. He'd moved to Hartford years ago for work. Police work I remembered vaguely. The door to my hospital room opened. I expected a nurse, another doctor, maybe police responding to the crash. Instead, a man in his mid-50s stepped in dressed in plain clothes, Hartford PD badge clipped to his belt. He had my father's eyes, gray-blue, sharp kind. "Larissa," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I'm Desmond Mercer, your uncle, and I think you need to tell me everything." I handed him my phone without a word. 9 pages of Stellan's letter and photos. The DNA test screenshots of Saskia's letters from Corbin's locked office, the hallway camera timestamp showing him at my medicine cabinet. Desmond took it, sat down in the chair beside my hospital bed, and started scrolling. His face changed with each image, hardened at the DNA test showing Stellan was Corbin's biological son. Darkened at the receipt from 2012, my inheritance account paying Wesley Sutton to destroy evidence of a fatal hit-and-run. Went stone cold at Saskia's March 10th letter describing exactly how she'd cut Stellan's brakes. He didn't speak, just kept scrolling, reading every word. 11:34. He looked up. "Search warrant," he said. "I can get it in 2 hours." He stood, stepped into the hallway, and I heard his voice through the half-open door. Rapid, authoritative, the tone of someone who'd spent 30 years as chief inspector and knew exactly which calls to make. "Garrett, it's Desmond Mercer. I need a search warrant executed in 2 hours. Two addresses, Hartford and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Vehicular manslaughter, 2012, attempted murder by poisoning, possible bigamy. I'm sending evidence now. A pause. Yes, I'm certain. My niece is the victim. She has documentation letters, DNA proof, security footage. I need this moving fast. They're planning to flee to Mexico April 15th. That gives us 3 weeks, but I don't want to wait. Another pause. DA's office already called them. They're reviewing now. This is happening, Garrett. Get your team ready. He came back into the room, and for the first time since reading Stellan's letter, I felt something shift. I wasn't alone anymore. Watching my uncle work was like watching a machine activate. He knew exactly which laws applied, how to move fast, who to call. 30 years of experience mobilizing in real time. The search warrant is moving, he said, sitting back down. But I need you to tell me who is Saskia Sterling Ashford. That name keeps appearing in these letters. Corbin's wife, I said. His real wife. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They've been planning this together, Stellan's murder, my poisoning, stealing my inheritance. Desmond pulled out his own phone, typed rapidly. Sterling Ashford, he muttered. Massachusetts marriage records. He went still, stared at the screen. Larissa, he said quietly. When did you marry Corbin? September 2014. We've been married 10 years. He turned his phone toward me. Marriage license. State of Massachusetts. Corbin Ashford and Saskia Sterling. August 3rd, 2006. Still active, never divorced. He married her 18 years ago, Desmond said. 8 years before he married you. The room tilted. That's not possible, I whispered. We have a marriage certificate, joint bank accounts. The house deed has both our names. Bigamy, Desmond said. Under Connecticut law, a second marriage while the first is still valid is void from the beginning. You were never married to him, Larissa. Legally, you never were. Not his wife. Never his wife. 10 years of my life, wedding vows, shared bank accounts, the house deed with both our names, all of it legally meaningless. I'd been living as a placeholder for his real wife in Massachusetts. He married me for my inheritance, I said, and my voice sounded distant, disconnected. Knowing his real wife was waiting, knowing it was all fake. The inheritance, Desmond said, pulling up another screen. Your father left you how much? $432,000 plus the house. And Corbin had access to those accounts, joint accounts after we married. He said it was easier for paying bills, managing finances together. Desmond's jaw tightened. He's been draining them for 10 years. The fence, the cover-up payment to Wesley, probably transferring funds to offshore accounts with Saskia. Your entire inheritance used to fund his crimes while he planned to kill you and take the rest. My phone buzzed in Desmond's hand. Text message. He glanced at the screen, then handed it to me. Unknown number. You're making a mistake. Walk away now. I showed it to Desmond. They know I'm here, I said. They know I'm talking to police. Good, Desmond said grimly. Let them know. Let them panic. Panicked people make mistakes. His own phone buzzed at 12:28. He answered immediately. Sinclair, what have you got? He listened, his expression shifting. You're certain how many? A pause. I'm coming down right now. Don't let anyone else touch it. Chain of custody starts immediately. He ended the call, looked at me. Detective Sinclair just searched Corbin's car, he said. Found a hidden compartment under the driver's seat. What was in it? A burner phone. 37 messages between Corbin and Saskia. My breath caught. 37 messages documenting the conspiracy, Desmond continued. Dates, times, planning. They kept records of everything, Larissa. Every step of Stellan's murder. Every detail of your poisoning. They documented their own crimes. Why would they keep that? Arrogance, control, insurance against each other turning. He stood. Or they never thought they'd get caught. People who've gotten away with murder for 12 years start to feel invincible. The burner phone sat in an evidence bag on Detective Sinclair's desk, its plastic casing catching the harsh fluorescent lights of the interrogation wing. Thursday afternoon, 2:17, and the trap was finally spinning backward. Desmond had brought me from the hospital straight to Hartford Police Headquarters. Now I sat across from Detective Garrett Sinclair, mid-40s, methodical, the kind of cop who'd built cases that didn't fall apart in court. I'll be back in an hour with everything we need to destroy them both. The burner phone sat in an evidence bag on Detective Sinclair's desk, and scrolling through the messages felt like reading a murder manual written in real time. Thursday afternoon, 2:17. Desmond had brought me from the hospital to Hartford Police Headquarters in a wheelchair I didn't need, but hospital policy required. Now I sat across from Detective Garrett Sinclair, mid-40s, methodical, the kind of cop who'd built cases that didn't fall apart in court. He held up the evidence bag. Cheap prepaid phone. The kind you buy with cash at a gas station and throw away when you're done. 37 messages, Sinclair said, all between your husband and Saskia Sterling Ashford, February through March 2024. He pulled up the phone records on his computer screen, turned the monitor toward me. The first message that mattered was dated March 12th, 5:43 p.m. 6 hours after Stellan Whitfield's car went off the road. Corbin done yet. Saskia clean. Wesley handled brake line last night. No witnesses. Car went off Route 44 this morning exactly as planned. I stared at the words. 6 hours after Stellan died, my husband was texting his accomplice asking for confirmation. Keep reading, Sinclair said quietly. March 18th, 10:22 p.m. Saskia. Next target ready. Confirmed she takes pills 10 p.m. nightly. Triple dose prepared. Pharmacy pickup tomorrow under your name. Corbin good. How long until effect? Saskia 2 to 3 weeks accumulation. Then stroke. Natural causes. Insurance pays out accounts transfer Mexico, April 15th. My hands went numb. That's you, Desmond said from behind me. March 18th. They're discussing your murder. Timeline, method, payout. I kept scrolling. More messages. February 28th, arranging Wesley Sutton's payment, $4,000 upfront, $4,000 after completion. March 3rd, discussing whether to stage Stellan's death as mechanical failure or driver error. March 11th at 9:47 p.m. 1 hour before Saskia cut the brake lines. Corbin texting make it clean. No forensic traces. I set the phone down carefully like it might explode. 37 text messages. They'd planned 2 murders via text message the way other couples plan dinner reservations. Casual, efficient, documented. Why would they keep this, I asked. Why document everything? Insurance, Sinclair said. If one turns on the other, they both have proof of conspiracy, mutually assured destruction, or arrogance. People who get away with murder for 12 years start to feel invincible. Did you find Corbin? I asked. Not yet. He hasn't returned to the Hartford house or his Cambridge address, but we will. Desmond's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway, came back 2 minutes later. Vermont State Police just arrested Wesley Sutton, he said, fleeing north on I-91 toward the Canadian border, duffel bag with $15,000 in cash. Sinclair stood immediately. Bring him here. I want him in interrogation within the hour. 6:20 p.m. Wesley Sutton arrived at Hartford Police Headquarters in handcuffs, flanked by 2 Vermont State troopers. Through the one-way glass of the observation room, I watched them bring him into interrogation room 2. 41 years old, grease under his fingernails, scared. Sinclair sat across from him, Desmond standing against the wall. Wesley Sutton, Sinclair began. You're being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, destruction of evidence in a 2012 vehicular manslaughter and accessory after the fact. You're looking at 25 years minimum, but if you cooperate... I'll tell you everything, Wesley interrupted. His voice shook. I want a deal. I want it in writing. I talk, I get reduced sentence. Start talking, Sinclair said. February 28th, what happened? Wesley took a breath. Woman came to my shop. Expensive clothes, nice car, black Lexus. But she wasn't driving. Man was driving. He stayed in the car the whole time. White guy, late 30s, expensive watch. She came inside, asked about brake work. Not repair, sabotage. Did she use that word? Sinclair asked. No. She said she needed brake lines cut on a silver Honda, make it look like mechanical failure. Offered $8,000 cash, 4 upfront, 4 after. Sinclair pulled up a photo on his tablet. This the woman? Wesley looked, nodded. That's her, Saskia. Another photo. And the man in the car. Wesley stared at Corbin's picture. Yeah, that's him. He waited 40 minutes while we talked. Just sat there in the driver's seat, didn't come inside, didn't leave, waited. He drove her there, sat in the car, waited. I watched through the glass as Sinclair leaned forward. March 11th, what happened then? She came back. Different car this time, silver Honda. Asked me to keep the shop open late. Showed up at 11 p.m., drove the car into my bay herself. And she cut the brake lines herself. Didn't ask me to do it. Did it herself while I watched. Knew exactly what she was doing, professional clean cuts, paid me the other 4,000 cash, said the car belonged to someone who'd been causing problems. Wesley's voice dropped. 2 days later, I saw the news. Car crash, silver Honda, woman dead, Route 44. I knew. I knew what I'd helped do. Why didn't you come forward? Sinclair asked. Because I took $8,000 to help murder someone. I'm guilty too, so I kept my mouth shut and hoped nobody would connect it. But when you started asking questions about Corbin Ashford, when you pulled my bank records, I ran. Sinclair stood. You're going to write all of this down, every detail, dates, times, descriptions, and you're going to testify. I will. I'll testify to everything. Just give me the deal in writing. 7:15 p.m. Sinclair came into the observation room where Desmond and I had been watching. We have him, Sinclair said. Wesley's testimony puts Corbin at the scene arranging the murder. The burner phone proves premeditation and coordination. The hallway camera shows medication tampering. The bigamy proves motive fraud, inheritance theft. Desmond checked his watch. 7:42. The evidence is overwhelming, he said. Wesley's testimony, the burner phone, your hallway camera, the bigamy records, we have them. He paused. But there's someone else who needs to hear this. Someone who's been waiting 14 years for answers about her husband's death. He looked at me. Larissa, I need you to meet Astrid Sterling. She's Nathan's widow. The woman who answered the door looked like she'd been holding her breath for 14 years. Thursday evening, 8:32. Desmond and I stood on the front steps of a modest ranch home in a quiet Hartford neighborhood, the kind of house you buy when you're starting over, when you've lost everything and you're rebuilding from nothing. Astrid Sterling was 52 with gray threading through dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a librarian's cardigan, sensible, worn at the elbows, and her eyes held the particular exhaustion of someone who'd carried grief so long it had become part of her posture. Mrs. Sterling, Desmond said gently. I'm Chief Inspector Desmond Mercer. We spoke on the phone. This is my niece, Larissa. Astrid looked at me, really looked, like she was trying to see past my face into my connection to her dead husband. Come in, she said quietly. The living room was small, clean. Photos lined the mantel, a progression of 3 children growing up without their father. Astrid saw me looking. Marcus, Penelope, and James, she said. 26, 24, and 18 now. They were 12, 10, and 4 when Nathan died. She moved to the kitchen, returned with tea. Her hands shook as she poured, and the cup rattled against the saucer with a rhythmic clicking that sounded like a clock counting lost time. Marcus was supposed to graduate from Yale, Astrid said, staring at the steam rising from her cup. Full scholarship. Computer science. He had 2 years left when Nathan died. But I couldn't work enough hours to keep the house, pay the bills, feed 3 kids. So Marcus came home, dropped out, got a job managing a hardware store because I needed help. She pointed to a photo from what looked like 2011. Happy family, father and 3 kids, everyone smiling. Then another photo, 2018. Marcus looked 40 instead of 20. Hollow eyes, shoulders bent. Penelope tried to kill herself twice, Astrid continued, her voice flat, matter of fact, the tone of someone who told the story so many times it had lost its edges. Once at 15, once at 17, depression, grief, guilt that she was alive and her father wasn't. She showed me another photo, young woman with scars on her wrists, barely visible in the frame. James doesn't remember his father's face, Astrid said. He asks me sometimes, why don't I have a daddy like everyone else? He's 18. He's asked that question his whole life. I set my tea down carefully. I'm so sorry. Nathan was a good man, Astrid said. Factory worker, evening shift, walking home because our second car had broken down and we couldn't afford to fix it. Crossing Elm Street at the crosswalk, following the rules. Her voice cracked. Someone hit him and kept driving. Police said the driver was probably drunk, probably panicked. They investigated for 6 months, found nothing, no witnesses, no evidence. Case went cold. Until now, Desmond said quietly. Astrid looked up. You said on the phone you have new information about the driver. We do, Desmond said. But first you mentioned you had footage from a neighbor's dash cam. Astrid stood, walked to a closet, pulled out a dusty cardboard box. Inside a small USB drive. My neighbor across the street, she said. Mr. Henderson. He had a dash cam in his car parked facing Elm Street. It was running that night, battery backup. He gave me the footage after Nathan died, said maybe someday it would help. She plugged the drive into a laptop on the coffee table, pulled up a video file. Police said it was too grainy to identify anyone, Astrid said. The figure was too far away, but I've watched this 1,000 times. I know someone is in this footage. I just could never prove who. The video started playing. Night. Grainy black and white. Timestamp in the corner glowing green. 11:47:23 p.m. March 14th, 2012. The exact moment one family ended and another began living a lie. The camera showed Elm Street, crosswalk, streetlights creating pools of yellow. Then movement. A car too fast swerving slightly. It struck something. Someone. The figure crumpled. The car didn't stop. 2 seconds later, the driver's door opened. A figure emerged. Ran. Not toward the victim. Away from it. The figure crossed the frame for maybe 3 seconds. Dark clothes. Too far from the camera for facial features. But the walk. I knew that walk. The slight drop in the left shoulder. The way the right leg favored weight, just a fraction more than the left. An old football injury Corbin had told me about years ago, torn ligament never quite healed right. My stomach dropped. I'd seen him walk across our bedroom 1,000 times. Watched him leave for work every morning. Knew the exact rhythm of his gait, the way you know a song you've heard your whole life. Do you recognize him? Astrid asked quietly. The police said the footage was too grainy, but you see it, don't you? I couldn't speak, couldn't look away from the screen. Larissa, Desmond said. Is that Corbin? I watched the footage loop, the figure fleeing, the distinctive posture, the shoulder, the leg. Yes, I whispered. That's him. Astrid closed her eyes. I've been waiting 14 years to hear someone say that. Desmond stood. Mrs. Sterling, this footage is now evidence in an active investigation. We need the original file. We have testimony phone records and now visual confirmation. We're going to get justice for Nathan. Astrid looked at him. Will he go to prison? Yes, Desmond said, for a very long time. 30 minutes later, Desmond drove us back toward my house. I stared out the window, watching the road blur past. The brake lights of the car ahead flashed red. Normal. Routine. Everything looked so normal. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. When we get home, I said quietly, I need to check the brakes on my car. Desmond's hands tightened on the wheel. Why? I thought of the insurance policy Corbin had taken out on me. The staged accident that killed Stellan. The pattern. Because I think I might be next. The brake pedal hit the floor with a soft, sickening thud, and nothing happened. We were 3 miles from my house, Desmond driving his car with me in the passenger seat. He'd insisted on following me home in my own vehicle to check the brakes together. I'd agreed, started my car pulled out of Astrid's driveway. Then the road began to slope downward. I pressed the brake. The pedals sank. No resistance, no friction. Just empty air beneath my foot. No, brake, brake! The car picked up speed. 30 miles an hour. 40. The slope steepened. I pumped the pedal frantically. Nothing. The brake line was completely severed. Desmond's headlights flashed behind me. He'd seen me accelerating, realized something was wrong. 50 miles an hour. The road curved ahead, trees on both sides, and directly in my path an oak tree the size of a building. I yanked the wheel right. The car veered off the road, tires screaming. There, a massive haystack in a farmer's field 20 feet from the tree line. I aimed for it. The impact felt like hitting a wall of cotton. The car plowed into the hay, momentum dying in a cloud of dust and dried grass. The airbag didn't even deploy. I'd been going just slow enough. Desmond's car screeched to a stop on the shoulder. He was out and running before I could open my door. Are you hurt? He pulled the door open, checking me for injuries. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the crash. From knowing they'd tried to kill me in the exact same way they killed Stellan. The exact same way. I'm fine, I said. Check under the car. Desmond dropped to his knees, pulled out his phone flashlight, looked beneath the chassis. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Brake fluid everywhere. The line's been cut, clean cut, professional. They knew, I said. They knew I went to Astrid's. They knew I saw the footage. Desmond stood already dialing his phone. Detective Sinclair, I need a tow truck to Route 44 mile marker 7 and a forensics team. Attempted murder, brake line sabotage. Yes, right now. The haystack saved my life. A haystack. One more second, and I'd have been wrapped around that oak tree, and they would have called it an accident. Mechanical failure. Tragic coincidence. Just like Stellan. 40 minutes later, my car sat in the police forensics bay hoisted on a lift under fluorescent lights. Howard Brennan, the forensic technician who'd analyzed my poison medication, now crouched beneath my car with a magnifying glass and evidence bags. Late 30s, precise clinical, he'd spent 15 years examining vehicular sabotage and knew what deliberate looked like. Before I show you what the forensic technician found under my car, are you still with me? Comment. A, if you think they'll find proof, or B, if you think they covered their tracks. Add one short reason, a quick note. The next part includes some recreated details for narrative impact. The truth behind it is what matters. Howard emerged from beneath the car holding up an evidence bag. Clean cut, he said. Not worn through, not rusted, cut. Same brake line caliper type as Stellan Whitfield's vehicle. Detective Sinclair stepped forward. Can you trace the brake fluid? Howard pulled up a report on his tablet. Already did. Brake fluid batch matches Wesley Sutton's workshop inventory log. Same lot number, purchased 3 days ago. Desmond's jaw tightened. Get Wesley back in here, now. 20 minutes later, Wesley Sutton sat in the interrogation room, again handcuffed, terrified. You said you'd cooperate, Sinclair said, sliding a photo across the table. My car, the severed brake line. So cooperate, who cut this brake line? Wesley stared at the photo. His face went white. That's not, I didn't. The brake fluid matches your inventory, Sinclair continued. Purchased 3 days ago. Same technique as Stellan Whitfield's murder. Same clean cut, talk. Wesley closed his eyes. Saskia, he whispered. Saskia came to my shop last night, 10 p.m. Said she needed the same work done. Same car model, same brake line cut. Offered another $4,000 cash. And you did it. No. Wesley looked up. I told her no. Told her I was done, that I was cooperating with police. She said fine, she'd do it herself. Asked to borrow my tools. I said no. She pulled a gun. Took my caliper cutters, took a bottle of brake fluid from my shelf, left. Sinclair leaned forward. She did it herself. That's what I'm telling you. She cut the brake line herself. Same technique I showed her for Stellan's car. She learned from watching me the first time. Desmond stepped into the observation room where I'd been watching. Saskia Sterling Ashford personally sabotaged your vehicle, he said. She didn't hire it done. She did it herself. That's attempted murder. First degree. Premeditated. We have her. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Judge Morrison, Chief Inspector Mercer. I need an arrest warrant. 2 of them. Corbin Ashford and Saskia Sterling Ashford. Charges conspiracy to commit murder, vehicular homicide, 2012, attempted murder, bigamy, fraud. Evidence package is being couriered to your chambers now. A pause. How fast can you approve it? Another pause. Midnight, perfect. We'll execute at 4 a.m. Coordinated takedown Hartford and Cambridge addresses simultaneously. Thank you, Your Honor. He ended the call, checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. 6 hours, he said. 6 hours until the warrants are signed. Then we move. At 11:52 p.m., Desmond's phone rang. He answered, listened, nodded. Understood, we're ready. He closed his phone, his face carved from stone. Arrest warrant approved. Special forces deploy 4 a.m. He looked at me. This ends tomorrow, all of it. I thought of Corbin and Saskia asleep in their separate houses, their separate lies. Corbin in Hartford, Saskia in Cambridge. Both of them thinking they'd gotten away with it. Thinking I was dead or dying in a car crash on Route 44. They had no idea what was coming. In 6 hours, tactical teams would hit both addresses simultaneously. In 6 hours, 14 years of murder and lies would end. I just had to survive until dawn. 36 bracelets spread across the hotel bedspread like evidence at a crime scene. I sat cross-legged on the floor at 11:47 p.m., counting them again. 36 children. 36 lives Corbin had touched while playing devoted father to Stellan, while playing devoted husband to me. The Hotel Monaco's generic beige walls felt safer than anywhere I'd been in weeks. Dr. Brennan had arranged the room under a different name. My phone, the regular one, sat powered off in the bathroom sink. The burner Astrid gave me glowed on the nightstand. I dialed the emergency CPS hotline with shaking fingers. Child Protective Services, this is Monica. I need to report a situation. My voice cracked. My stepson, Stellan. His father is about to be arrested for murder, and his biological mother has just passed away. He is an 8-year-old child who communicates only through drawings. He doesn't know what's coming, and he shouldn't be caught in the middle of a tactical police raid. Monica took down the details. She promised someone would coordinate with the tactical team to make sure Stellan was removed safely before the worst happened. I hung up and stared at the bracelets. Stellan's mother had tried to tell me, not with words, she couldn't, not with Corbin monitoring everything, but with those hidden notes. I'd missed the conspiracy completely. She'd known she was going to die, and she'd left me breadcrumbs anyway. The rage hit like a physical blow. I swept half the bracelets onto the floor, then immediately dropped to my knees to gather them. These weren't props in my trauma. These belonged to a real child who'd trusted his father while living caged behind that fence. My burner phone buzzed at 1:33 a.m. Desmond, you need to see this. Sending photos now. The first image loaded slowly. A wall panel standing open in what I recognized as Corbin's home office. The room he'd always kept locked, claiming professional privacy. Behind the false wall, a small space maybe 3 feet deep filled with papers. The second photo showed a letter in Saskia's handwriting dated April 2022, 26 months before the neighbor's car crash. See Phase 1 complete. Sold the Tahoe property. Establishing paper trail for Mexico residency. Her life insurance updated per your instructions. We proceed as planned. April 2022. I'd been married to Corbin for 3 years by then. Our neighbor had still been healthy, working her jobs to survive. The third photo, another letter, June 2022. C. Met with the mechanic you recommended. He confirms the modification is undetectable. Timing depends on weather conditions. We wait. The mechanic, the brake line. They'd spent 2 years planning our neighbor's murder. 2 years creating bank accounts and escape routes while I've sat in our house trusting Corbin completely. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. When I came back, 3 more photos had loaded. Letters spanning 2022 to 2023, each one more detailed. Discussion of the widow's timeline, how long I'd grieve before Corbin could collect my inheritance without suspicion. Plans for Saskia to resurface once I was eliminated. They'd choreographed everything. The neighbor's death was just Act 1. The final photo made my blood stop. 2 airline tickets tucked into a manila envelope. Aeromexico Flight 447, departing Logan Airport at 9 a.m. today, well, this morning now. Destination, Puerto Vallarta. Passenger names Corbin Ashford and Saskia Brennan, her maiden name. I checked the time, 2:04 a.m. 7 hours until that flight boarded. The raid was set for 3:45 a.m. dawn, when targets are most disoriented. I texted Desmond. Send everything to Detective Sinclair immediately. Tell him about the flight. Desmond. Already done. SWAT's moving the timeline up. 3:45 a.m. now. They want them in custody before the airport is even an option. My phone buzzed again. Different number, Detective Sinclair himself. Mrs. Ashford, stay where you are. Teams are mobilizing now. You'll have confirmation by 4:30 a.m. I stood at the hotel window watching the empty street below. Somewhere across the city, tactical units were gearing up. Corbin would be asleep in the house we'd shared, dreaming about Mexican beaches, planning to spend that stolen money on a tropical resort while I rotted in confusion. Saskia would be packed her go-bags by the door, ready to grab at the first sign of trouble. I gathered the bracelets into a neat pile. 36 reminders of a child who deserved better. Outside, headlights appeared. Dark SUVs passing through. Justice was finally waking up. 57 minutes until 2 years of lies met a battering ram. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and watched the pre-dawn darkness. Waiting. I dialed the emergency CPS hotline with shaking fingers. Waiting. 4:15 in the morning, the battering ram hit the door and the world exploded in light and sound. I watched from the police command center 3 miles away, my eyes locked on the wall of monitors streaming live body camera feeds. Desmond stood beside me, his hand gripping the back of my chair. Captain Ryan Fletcher, 46, who'd led tactical operations for 15 years, barked into his radio headset. All teams in position. Breach in 3, 2, 1, go, go, go. The feed shook violently as officers poured through the shattered entrance of Saskia's Cambridge mansion. Flashbang grenades detonated with white bursts that whited out the cameras for half a second. Shouted commands overlapped. Clear left, moving upstairs, kitchen secure. I'd imagined this moment during the 57-minute countdown. I'd pictured chaos, resistance, maybe violence. What I saw instead was surgical precision. 8 operators moving through a 5,000 square foot mansion, like water flowing downhill, cutting off every exit, every room, every possibility of escape. Second floor master bedroom, Fletcher said quietly, watching a different monitor. Target acquired. The body cam showed Saskia sitting upright in bed, designer silk pajamas, perfectly pressed hands folded in her lap, not scrambling for a weapon, not diving for a window, just sitting there waiting. Target secured, the officer's voice crackled through the speaker. No resistance. Desmond leaned closer to me. Watch her face when they find the evidence. She won't break. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. 2 officers remained with Saskia while the rest swept the house. The garage feed showed an officer approaching her Mercedes, pearl white immaculate. He popped the trunk. Command, we've got tools here. Brake caliper cutters, gloves with... He lifted a pair of latex gloves with a gloved hand, sniffed carefully. Brake fluid residue on both gloves. My stomach twisted. The same tools that had cut Stellan's brake lines. Just sitting in Saskia's trunk like gardening equipment. 4:15 in the morning. The exact moment 14 years of lies shattered. But the evidence kept coming. Command master bedroom closet. We've got cash. A lot of cash. The body cam panned across vacuum-sealed bundles stacked in clear plastic bins. $100 bills organized by denomination labeled with amounts. $22,000 pre-packaged and ready to travel. Console safe is open, another officer reported. 2 passports, Mexican, both forgeries decent quality. Names are Corbin Ashford and Saskia Brennan. Brennan, her maiden name, the identity she'd used to disappear. Airline tickets in the same envelope, the officer continued. Aeromexico flight 447, today's date, departure 9 a.m. I stared at the monitor at the tickets held up to the camera. In 6 hours, she would have been through airport security. In 7 hours, airborne. By nightfall, vanished into a country with no extradition treaty for conspiracy charges. She was leaving this morning, I whispered. 6 hours from now, she'd be gone. Desmond's jaw tightened. 14 years of planning, all of it documented, packed, ready to run. Captain Fletcher tilted his head, listening to something in his earpiece. Then he nodded, satisfied. Second team confirms identical evidence at Ashford's residence. Hidden room behind the office panel, just like your brother reported. Letters, financial documents, escape route maps. We've got them both. Both, Corbin and Saskia, caught in the same net. The body cam feed shifted back to the master bedroom. 2 officers flanked Saskia as a third, Captain Fletcher himself, I realized from the voice, read her rights. Saskia Sterling Ashford, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, vehicular sabotage, insurance fraud, and flight risk. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Saskia said nothing. Her face could have been carved from marble. No shock, no fear, no anger. Not even the false innocence I'd expected, the tearful denials, the desperate explanations. Nothing. They cuffed her hands behind her back. She stood smoothly, posture perfect, shoulders straight. The silk pajamas didn't have a wrinkle. Her hair sat in a neat braid down her back, like she'd prepared for this, like she'd known exactly what was coming and had dressed accordingly. Ma'am, do you understand these rights as I've explained them? Fletcher asked. Saskia looked directly at the body camera. Directly at me, though she couldn't have known I was watching. Her eyes were flat, empty. She didn't answer. Noted for the record, Fletcher said. Suspect declined to respond. Let's move. They walked her downstairs through the shattered front entrance past the tactical team still cataloging evidence. Dawn was just starting to break, pale gray light seeping across the manicured lawn. Armored vehicles lined the circular driveway. Neighbors' lights flickered on in distant windows. I'd seen guilt, seen fear, seen rage. I'd never seen this nothing. Absolute nothing behind those eyes. Saskia Sterling Ashford had orchestrated my sister's murder, tried to kill me, stolen 14 years of Stellan's life and Stellan's innocence. She'd done it all with meticulous planning, with backup plans and escape routes and forged documents. And now, caught with overwhelming evidence facing life in prison, she looked like a woman waiting for a taxi. No remorse, no humanity, just cold, controlled emptiness. Sociopath, Desmond said quietly. Clinical. She genuinely doesn't feel what normal people feel. They loaded her into the armored transport vehicle. Even with her hands cuffed, even surrounded by armed officers, Saskia moved with grace. She stepped up into the vehicle without stumbling, settled onto the bench seat, and stared straight ahead. The body camera caught one final close-up as the officers secured the door. Saskia's face filled the screen, cold blank, utterly unmoved. Then Desmond's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. "Larissa," his voice cracked. "Corbin's house. You need to see this right now." Corbin's house was empty, bed made, closets cleared, every trace of him erased like he'd never existed. Captain Fletcher switched the feed to Corbin's body cam. The Hartford house I'd shared with him looked sterile. No clothes in the bedroom, no toiletries in the bathroom. The hidden office panel stood open, the secret room behind it stripped bare. "Primary residence is empty," the radio crackled. "Repeat target not at primary location." Desmond's hand tightened on my shoulder. GPS tracker on his phone. They're pulling it now. 30 seconds of silence, then Fletcher's radio buzzed. "Got him. Signals at 447 Elm Street, apartment 3B. Registered to Michael Donovan. Moving now." The body cam feed switched to a tactical van racing through pre-dawn Hartford. The team breached the apartment with the same explosive efficiency. Flashbang, shouted commands, officers flooding a cramped two-bedroom unit. They found Corbin sitting on the bed next to two packed suitcases. He didn't resist, just held out his wrists for the cuffs, his face gray and slack. "Corbin Ashford, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder." "Did Larissa see this?" Corbin interrupted, his voice hoarse. "Does she know?" The officer ignored him, continuing Miranda. Another officer unzipped the suitcases on camera. Clothes, cash in Ziploc bags, a manila envelope. "We've got a passport and an airline ticket. Aerolíneas Argentinas Flight 1032, departing Boston Logan at 10 a.m., destination Buenos Aires." Buenos Aires. Not Mexico, not Puerto Vallarta. Argentina. Saskia had tickets to Mexico. Corbin had a ticket to Argentina. He was leaving her, I whispered. After everything they planned together, he was leaving Saskia behind. Desmond let out a sharp breath. Different countries, different flights, different escape plans. They'd been planning to betray each other all along. The irony hit like a punch. 2 conspirators, 2 murderers, 14 years of coordination, and in the end, each one ready to abandon the other and disappear alone. No loyalty, no partnership. Just 2 sociopaths using each other until the very last moment. Corbin was loaded into transport, his expensive suit rumpled, his silver hair disheveled. He looked old, smaller than I remembered. Nothing like the confident attorney who'd charmed me at Stellan's funeral. Who'd proposed on the anniversary of her death, calling it healing. He'd been planning her murder before she even died. Captain Fletcher appeared beside me. "Both targets in custody. Detective Sinclair is ready upstairs. He's got the burner phone analysis." Desmond and I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Detective Garrett Sinclair met us in a conference room, a laptop open and evidence bags stacked beside it. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, shirt wrinkled, tie loose. "Mrs. Ashford," he said quietly. "The forensic work on the phone was exceptional. We've recovered 37 messages between Corbin and Saskia dated January through November 2024. The log shows a cold, calculated division of labor." Sinclair nodded grimly. "Saskia directed every step, the timing, the mechanics, the logistics. Corbin executed everything on the ground, the surveillance, your medication tampering, and managing the payout. They both knew exactly what they were doing. 37 messages. 37 times they chose murder over mercy. 37 pieces of evidence proving that our neighbor's death was entirely premeditated." Desmond leaned forward. "This is first-degree murder. Premeditated, coordinated conspiracy. The DA is going to bury them." "Both suspects have requested lawyers," Sinclair confirmed. "But the evidence is overwhelming. Burner messages, break tools, financial records, GPS data, witness testimony, hidden room documents. We have everything." He closed the laptop. "It's over, Mrs. Ashford. They're both in custody. They're not getting out." It's over. 14 years of lies, months of investigation, weeks of terror, and now in one dawn raid, both monsters in handcuffs. I should have felt relief, victory, justice. Instead, I just felt hollow. She was right about everything, I whispered. I just wish I'd believed her sooner. Desmond's hand covered mine. You believed her when it mattered. You found the truth. You stopped them. I looked at the evidence bags on the table, the burner phones that had coordinated a nightmare, the brake tools that had cut a life short, the forged passports that would have let them vanish, all of it caught, documented, prosecutable. Desmond checked his watch. 6:10 in the morning. The sun was rising over Hartford, pale November dawn, filtering through the conference room windows. Now for the most important part, he said quietly. Let's go bring your son home. Stellan, my stepson, the 8-year-old boy who'd lost his mother in one night, who didn't know his mother's death was a murder or his father a co-conspirator, who needed someone to choose him, protect him, love him despite the poison in his bloodline. Desmond held the door open. Outside dawn was breaking over Hartford, the first sunrise in 14 years that felt like it might actually bring light. Your son is waiting, he said quietly. I took a breath. Stellan, my boy, time to bring him home. He was smaller than I remembered, standing in the DCF office doorway with a braided bracelet clutched in both hands. 2 days since the arrests, 2 days since Stellan's world shattered. He wore dinosaur pajamas under a too big sweatshirt, his dark hair uncombed, his eyes red-rimmed. When he saw me, he ran, not away, toward. He crashed into my legs, wrapping his arms around my knees, pressing his face against my thighs. The bracelet, blue and yellow threads woven together in a clumsy pattern, fell from his hands onto the linoleum floor. I dropped to my knees and pulled him into my arms. He smelled like institutional soap and fear. I've got you, I whispered into his hair. I've got you, baby. You're safe now. Dr. Evelyn Prescott, 54, who specialized in childhood trauma and selective mutism, stood in the doorway with a gentle smile. She'd worked with Stellan since Saturday morning, coaxing him through the initial shock, the CPS interviews, the sudden absence of both parents. He's been waiting for you, she said quietly. He finished that bracelet this morning. I looked down at the braided threads on the floor. Stellan pulled back, picked it up carefully, and pressed it into my palm. 37. He'd made me the 37th bracelet. The complete set. Thank you, sweetheart, I whispered, slipping it onto my wrist beside the others. It's perfect. Dr. Prescott gestured toward a small consultation room. There's something Stellan needs to show you. We've been working on a way for him to talk about what he saw. What he saw. My stomach tightened. The room had a child-sized table, crayons scattered across the surface, and several drawings pinned to a corkboard. Dr. Prescott pulled out a chair for me. Stellan climbed into my lap without hesitation, his small body curling against mine. Stellan, Dr. Prescott said gently, placing a fresh sheet of paper in front of us. Can you show Larissa what you showed me yesterday about the night with the car? Stellan's fingers tightened on my sleeve. Then slowly he reached for a black crayon. He drew a rectangle, 4 wheels, a car. Then a stick figure beside it, blonde hair in a ponytail, crouched low near the front wheel. In the figure's hands, a pair of pliers. My breath stopped. Stellan's crayon moved to the top corner of the page. A small square, a window. Inside it, a tiny stick figure with dark hair watching. Stellan, I whispered, my voice breaking. Baby, what did you see that night? He pointed to the window, then to himself. Dr. Prescott leaned forward, her voice soft. His bedroom window faces the driveway at Saskia's house. He saw everything. He's been trying to tell us for weeks, but he couldn't find the words. My 8-year-old stepson had watched a woman cut brake lines from his bedroom window. And he couldn't tell anyone. He couldn't speak. I pulled him closer, my hand cradling the back of his head. He was shaking. You're so brave, I told him. So brave. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. He buried his face in my neck. Dr. Prescott collected the drawing carefully, sliding it into a protective sleeve. This is admissible evidence. The DA will want to see it. It corroborates everything else, the tools, the GPS data, the messages. Stellan's had witnessed his own mother attempting murder. He'd carried that knowledge silently through weeks of confusion, through the arrests, through the sudden loss of everything familiar. And he'd made me a bracelet, because that's what children do. They survive, they adapt, They find tiny ways to show love even when the world is burning. I held him for 20 minutes, while Dr. Prescott made calls, arranged custody paperwork, scheduled trauma counseling. When we finally left the DCF office, Stellan's hand was locked in mine. He was coming home. 1 week later, my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Ms. Ashford, this is Administrator Reynolds at Connecticut Correctional Medical Facility. We have a situation with your husband. Ex-husband, I wanted to say. But legally, the bigamous marriage made me his next of kin until the courts untangled the mess. What kind of situation? Acute organ failure. He needs emergency surgery within the next few hours. You're his only legal guardian. Without your signature, he dies. I sat up in bed, my mind spinning. Corbin, dying. My signature, the only thing standing between him and oblivion. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The prison medical facility smelled like disinfectant and despair. Nurse Margaret Dalton, 48, who'd spent 2 decades managing incarcerated patients, met me in the administration wing with a clipboard. Sign here to authorize the surgery. She said, her tone professional but not unkind. Without it, he'll be in multi-organ failure by noon. I looked at the form. Corbin's name printed at the top. Authorization for life-saving intervention. The man who'd orchestrated my sister's murder, who'd tried to kill me, who'd stolen 14 years and countless futures. Sign here to save his life. The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But I thought about Stellan, about justice, about the long, slow punishment of a life sentence in maximum security. Death would be mercy. I wasn't giving him mercy. I signed. Then I pulled a folded note from my purse and handed it to Nurse Dalton. Give him this after he wakes up. She glanced at the sealed envelope, then nodded. I'd written it the night before, somehow knowing this moment would come. Corbin. I'm not signing this out of loyalty, forgiveness, or love. I'm signing because I want you to live. I want you conscious and aware for every single day of your sentence. I want you to wake up every morning in that cell and remember what you did. I want you to live long enough to pay for every year of my sister's stolen life. Death would be too easy. Larissa. 4 hours later, Nurse Dalton called. The surgery was successful. He's stable. Did you give him the note? A pause. Yes, he read it, folded it carefully. Then he cried. I closed my eyes, cried. First real emotion I've seen from him since intake, Nurse Dalton said quietly. She hesitated. Ms. Ashford, the other one, Saskia, she's scheduled for psychiatric evaluation tomorrow. The preliminary reports, you should hear what they're saying about her. My hand tightened on the phone. What are they saying? Come by tomorrow afternoon. The evaluator wants to talk to you. She paused. It's worse than we thought. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed what we already knew: antisocial personality disorder, incapable of empathy or remorse. Saskia's brain scans showed reduced activity in regions governing emotional processing. Clinical proof she was a monster. 6 weeks later, the bailiff called Astrid Sterling to the stand and the courtroom went silent. Hartford Superior Court was packed, journalists in the back rows. Desmond beside me in the gallery, Stellan with Dr. Prescott in the witness waiting room. Judge Catherine Reynolds, 58, who'd built her reputation on harsh sentences for violent crimes, presided from the bench with steel gray hair and an expression carved from granite. Astrid wore black. She'd worn black every day of the trial, mourning Nathan across 14 years of stolen justice. The prosecutor stood. Mrs. Sterling, can you describe the impact of Nathan Sterling's death on your family? Astrid's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the witness stand rail. My oldest son, Marcus, was at Yale when his father died, pre-med. He dropped out 3 weeks later and never went back. He works construction now, says he can't focus long enough to read anymore. Her voice was steady, but pain bled through every word. My daughter Emma was 15. She's attempted suicide twice. She's 29 now and still in intensive therapy. Some days she can't get out of bed. I watched Corbin. He stared at the defense table, jaw tight. My youngest Nathan was 6 months old when Nathan died. He's 13 now. He asks why he doesn't have a daddy like the other kids. He's been asking that question his whole life. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the heating system hum. Astrid turned in her seat, looking directly at Corbin. You were there that night. You saw what happened. You knew my husband was dying in that ravine and you ran. Corbin's lawyer started to object, but Judge Reynolds held up a hand. Let her speak. Astrid's voice hardened. You had 14 years to do the right thing. 14 years to turn yourself in, to give my family closure, to let us bury Nathan knowing the truth. Her eyes burned. You chose 14 years of lies instead. You married twice, built a career, played loving husband and father while my children grew up without theirs. You had countless chances to confess. You chose concealment every single time. The prosecutor let the words hang in the air for 5 full seconds before speaking. Let the record show Defendant Ashford cannot meet Mrs. Sterling's eyes. Corbin was staring at his hands. The dashcam footage played next. The massive screen showed the ravine, the overturned Audi Nathan's brake lights disappearing over the edge. Then the timestamp 11:47 p.m. A figure emerged from the tree line, tall, distinctive gait, expensive coat. Corbin. He looked directly at the camera for 2 seconds, then he ran. The dashcam footage played. 14 seconds. 14 seconds that destroyed 2 families and took 14 years to find justice. The jury watched in absolute silence. 2 women were crying. Astrid stepped down. As she passed the defense table, Saskia's expression didn't change. Still blank, still empty. The trial lasted 4 more days. Desmond testified about the financial forensics. Detective Sinclair walked the jury through the burner messages. Dr. Prescott presented Stellan's drawing, the small stick figure watching from the window, while his mother sabotaged brake lines. The defense had nothing. They tried to argue coercion, mental instability, insufficient evidence. But the prosecution had 37 text messages, GPS, data break tools with residue-forged passports, escape tickets, witness testimony, and 14 years of coordinated lies. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they filed back in, Harold Mitchell, the foreman 64, a retired accountant with methodical precision, stood with a paper in his hands. Judge Reynolds looked at him. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Stellan Whitfield, how do you find? Guilty. My breath caught. On the charge of vehicular sabotage resulting in death. Guilty. On the charge of felony murder in the death of Nathan Sterling. Guilty. Harold Mitchell read through 17 counts. Guilty on every single one. Both defendants. No exceptions. Saskia sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table. No reaction. No emotion. Corbin's shoulders slumped. Judge Reynolds waited until the courtroom settled, then addressed the defendants. Saskia Sterling Ashford, you orchestrated a 14-year pattern of calculated murder, sabotage, and fraud. You showed no remorse, no empathy, and no regard for human life. I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 30 years. Saskia blinked once, that was all. Corbin Ashford, you participated in these crimes willingly. You fled the scene of a fatal accident, concealed evidence, and conspired to commit additional murders. You were given countless opportunities to confess and chose deception. I sentence you to 45 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Corbin looked up. His eyes found mine across the courtroom. I looked away. The bailiffs led them out in handcuffs. Saskia walked like she was going to a board meeting. Corbin stumbled. Guilty, both of them. So why did I still feel empty? Desmond's arm wrapped around my shoulders. It's over. They're never getting out. I know, but Stellan was still gone. Nathan was still dead. Astrid's children were still fatherless. Stellan still had nightmares about the night he watched his mother crouch beside my car with pliers. Justice didn't undo any of that. I walked out of the courtroom into the corridor. Stellan was waiting with Dr. Prescott sitting on a bench with a dinosaur coloring book. When he saw me, he jumped down and ran over. I picked him up, holding him tight. He wrapped his arms around my neck. Is it done? Dr. Prescott asked quietly. I nodded. It's done. Stellan's small hand fit perfectly in mine as we walked down the courthouse steps into the February sunlight. The press called questions. Cameras flashed, but I didn't look back. Justice was served. Now came the harder part, learning to live with it. Healing happened slowly. Therapy twice a week for Stellan, once a week for me. Nightmares fading to bad dreams, then to restless sleep, then to mornings where he woke up smiling. 2 weeks after the verdict, the woman who walked into family court had Stellan's eyes and a team of Manhattan lawyers. Cressida Mercer, my oldest sister. We hadn't spoken in 8 years, not since she'd called my own wedding to Corbin provincial, and skipped it entirely. She'd built her career as a marketing director in Manhattan, pulling down $415,000 a year, living in a 5-bedroom townhouse she'd bought with cash. Now, seeing the news of the trial, she wanted to help me obtain custody of Stellan. She'd built her career as a marketing director in Manhattan, pulling down $415,000 a year, living in a 5-bedroom townhouse she'd bought with cash. Now she wanted custody of Stellan. Judge Robert Hammond, late 50s, who'd spent 20 years prioritizing children's emotional needs over bank account balances, sat behind the bench reviewing her petition. Cressida's lead attorney, salt and pepper hair, Armani suit briefcase that cost more than my car, stood to present her case. Your Honor, Ms. Whitfield can provide educational opportunities Mrs. Ashford cannot match. She has secured placement at Manhattan Preparatory Academy, annual tuition $68,000. She owns her home outright in the Upper East Side. She can offer cultural experiences, international travel, and financial security that— I understand, Judge Hammond interrupted, scanning the documents. Mrs. Ashford earns $42,000 annually as a nonprofit administrator, the lawyer said, making poverty sound like a moral failing. Cressida sat perfectly still at the plaintiff's table, her designer dress immaculate, her hair in the same French twist she'd worn since college. She looked at Stellan sitting beside me, coloring quietly like he was a problem to be solved with enough money. Judge Hammond turned to me. Mrs. Ashford, do you wish to respond to these points? I didn't launch into arguments about love versus wealth or connection versus privilege. I reached into my bag and pulled out 3 things: Stellan's will notarized and legal naming me as Stellan's guardian, the 37 bracelets woven by 36 children, and 1 8-year-old boy who'd survived his parents' arrest. Stellan's drawing the stick figure child in the window watching his mother cut brake lines. I placed them on the table in front of the judge without saying a word. Judge Hammond picked up the will first, read it slowly. Then he looked at the bracelets, the bright colors, the clumsy knots, the evidence of small hands and big hearts. Finally, the drawing. He was quiet for a long moment. Ms. Whitfield, he said, these bracelets represent— Cressida's lawyer started to answer, but Judge Hammond held up a hand. I'm asking Ms. Whitfield. Cressida opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know. Mrs. Ashford. I looked at Stellan, then back at the judge. Stellan left a will. She chose me. That's my response. I didn't need to argue. Stellan already made her choice. Stellan already made his. Judge Hammond set down the drawing carefully. I'd like to ask Stellan a question if both parties consent. Cressida's lawyers conferred in urgent whispers. Finally, they nodded. Dr. Prescott, who'd accompanied us as Stellan's therapist, brought him to stand in front of the bench. Judge Hammond came down from his seat, kneeling so he was eye level with the small boy. Stellan, he said gently, do you know who that lady is? He pointed at Cressida. Stellan shook his head. That's your Aunt Cressida. She knew your Aunt Stellan when Stellan was little, just like you. She wants you to come live with her in a big house in New York City. Do you understand? Stellan's looked at Cressida. She smiled, brittle, uncertain, trying too hard. Then he looked at me. Judge Hammond continued, can you show me who you want to live with? Stellan's didn't hesitate. He ran to me, wrapped his arms around my legs, buried his face against my hip. His small hands clutched the fabric of my skirt. I knelt down and pulled him close. He was shaking. It's okay, baby, I whispered. It's okay. When I looked up, Cressida was crying. Not delicate tears, real ugly crying, her perfect makeup running her shoulders, shaking her hands, covering her face. Her lead lawyer touched her arm. Ms. Whitfield, we can— No. Cressida stood abruptly. Her voice was raw. Your Honor, I'm withdrawing the petition. The lawyer blinked. Ms. Whitfield, we haven't— I said I'm withdrawing it. She looked at me across the courtroom. Stellan chose you in her will. Stellan is choosing you now. I thought— Her voice broke. I thought money could replace love. I thought I could fix my mistakes by throwing resources at them. I was wrong. She wiped her eyes with trembling hands. I wasn't there for Stellan when she was alive. I don't get to play hero now that she's gone. The aunt with millions was crying. The mother with nothing was smiling. Judge Hammond stood slowly. Ms. Whitfield, are you certain? Yes, Your Honor. He picked up his gavel. Then this court awards full and permanent custody of Stellan Whitfield to Larissa Ashford, effective immediately. The gavel struck wood with a sound like a door closing on the past and opening on the future. Stellan's arms tightened around my neck. Desmond, sitting in the gallery, let out a breath he'd been holding for 2 hours. Cressida gathered her lawyers and her briefcase and her shattered composure. She walked toward the exit with her head down, shoulders curved inward. Outside the courtroom, she stopped me. Her voice broke. Can I visit him sometimes? I'm his only connection to Stellan's family. I could have said no. Could have reminded her of 8 years of silence, of missed birthdays, and ignored phone calls of the wedding she'd skipped because she thought we were beneath her. Instead, I looked at Stellan, then back at her. We'd like that, I said. Cressida came the following Saturday with gifts too many, too expensive, but she sat on the floor and played dinosaurs with Stellan without judgment. Small steps. Tentative rebuilding. 1 week later, I took Stellan to Cedar Hill Cemetery. The sunflowers were the color of every promise Stellan never got to keep. We walked through rows of headstones in late February, cold, our breath misting in the air. Stellan held my hand tightly, the other hand clutching something small, the first red bracelet, the one he'd made for Stellan months ago before she died. Her grave sat beneath an oak tree, the headstone simple gray granite. Her grave sat beneath an oak tree, the headstone simple gray granite. Stellan Whitfield, 1990 to 2025. Beloved mother, neighbor, friend. I knelt on the frozen ground and placed the sunflowers against the stone. Stellan stood beside me, silent as always, his dark eyes fixed on her name. Your mama loved you more than anything in this world, I said quietly. She made me promise to keep you safe, and I have. I will. Stellan's fingers tightened on the bracelet. She knew what they were planning, I continued. She couldn't stop them, but she tried. She left me clues. She fought to her last breath for you, Stellan, every breath. He knelt slowly, placing the red bracelet against the headstone. It looked tiny against the granite, fragile threads of color against cold stone. Then he looked up at the gray February sky and whispered one word, Mama. My heart stopped. His first word in 6 months, since Stellan's death, since his world shattered and his voice disappeared into trauma and silence. One word. After 6 months of silence, he gave me one word, and it was enough. I pulled him into my arms, and he didn't pull away. We knelt there together in the cold, while the wind moved through the oak branches, and the red bracelet stayed exactly where he'd placed it. Days later at home, Stellan sat at the kitchen table with crayons and paper. He'd been drawing more. Therapy was helping, Dr. Prescott said, giving him ways to process what words couldn't yet handle. He looked up at me, pointed to the paper. What is it, baby? He wrote in careful block letters, letter to Corbin. My stomach tightened. You don't have to forgive him, Stellan, not if you're not ready. He shook his head, kept writing. When he finished, he pushed the paper toward me. Corbin, I don't call you Dad, but I don't hate you. Mom taught me not to hate anyone. I'm fine with Larissa. She takes care of me. Stellan. I read it twice, my throat tight. This 8-year-old boy who'd witnessed his mother's sabotage and his father's arrest, who'd lost everything familiar in one terrible night, he was choosing grace. Not because Corbin earned it, because Stellan needed to let go. You're a better person than I am, Stellan, I whispered. He handed me a pen. I understood. He wanted me to add something. I wrote beneath his message. This boy is better than you deserve. Don't let him down again. Larissa. I mailed it the next day. Corbin sent no reply. I didn't expect one. The following week, the demolition crew arrived. The 12-foot iron fence had stood for 3 years, Corbin's monument to control the barrier that kept me isolated from neighbors and sunlight. Desmond had hired the crew as a gift. Cressida helped pay for it, her way of contributing something meaningful instead of just expensive. Stellans and I stood in the yard watching workers unbolt the first section. Metal screamed against metal. The fence had been installed in panels, each one secured with industrial bolts driven deep into concrete footings. Stellan's hand found mine as the first panel tilted, then fell with a ground-shaking crash. Light poured in. I hadn't realized how dark the yard had become, how the fence had turned our property into a cage, shadow-filled and suffocating. Now with just one panel down, February sunlight streamed across the grass. Stellan would have loved this, Cressida said quietly, standing beside us, tearing down the walls, letting the light in. Another panel came down, then another. Each iron bar that came down let in more light, like watching a prison dissolve into a garden. By mid-afternoon, half the fence was gone. The workers broke for lunch, and I made sandwiches, while Stellan explored the newly opened yard, touching the grass where Shadow had lived for years. A car pulled up, Astrid Sterling carrying a covered dish. I heard about the fence, she said. Thought you might need lunch for the workers. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her in court, but lighter somehow, less burdened. My daughter Emma's starting therapy. Astrid said as we walked to the yard together. First time she's smiled in 3 years. Your courage gave her hope. The trial gave us all closure. We sat on the back steps, me, Astrid, Cressida, Stellan. Two families destroyed by the same monsters sitting together peacefully for the first time, eating sandwiches while workers tore down barriers. The last panel came down at 4:30. The foreman gave a signal and the crew lowered it carefully to the ground. Afternoon light flooded the entire yard, brilliant, warm, unrestricted. Stellans walked to the pile of metal debris. He picked up a small piece, maybe 3 inches long, part of a decorative scroll that had topped one of the fence posts. He turned it over in his hands, studying it. Then he walked back to me and wrote on my palm with his finger, "To remember." I knelt down, looking into his eyes. "Yes, baby, we remember, but we don't let it keep us in the dark anymore." He nodded solemnly, pocketed the metal piece. Not forgetting, not pretending the fence never existed, but choosing to transform it from a symbol of imprisonment into evidence of freedom. That night, Stellan climbed into bed with the small piece of fence on his nightstand and the 37 bracelets lined up beside it. He looked at me. "Story," he whispered, his second word that week. I smiled, settling beside him, pulling the blanket up to his chin. "Once upon a time," I began, "there was a girl who taught the world about courage." I told him stories every night after that. Stories about a woman who loved sunflowers and fought monsters with nothing but truth and courage. Stories that made the past bearable and the future possible. 18 months later, sunflowers grew where the fence used to stand. I sat on the wooden bench in December cold, watching the last blooms of the season bend in the wind. The bench was simple pine built with my own hands, with words burned into the backrest, where strangers became family. Stellan sat beside me, now 6.5, wearing the dinosaur jacket Cressida had bought him. He was talking full sentences, constant questions, the chatter of a child who'd found his voice again. "When will Aunt Cressida get here?" he asked. "Any minute, she's bringing lunch." Cressida had relocated her office to Hartford 6 months ago. Not full-time, she kept her Manhattan position, but she worked remotely 3 days a week, so she could visit, could be present, could slowly become the aunt she'd never been to Stellan. And Miss Astrid. Sunday dinner like always. Astrid Sterling came every Sunday now, brought casseroles and stories about her daughter Emma, who'd been accepted to art school, who'd painted sunflowers for her portfolio, bright, defiant, alive. "Because of you two," Astrid had said last week, tears in her eyes. "Emma said your story gave her permission to heal." The garden had taken 3 months to plant. Desmond helped dig the beds where concrete fence footings had been. Cressida paid for the soil and seeds. Stellan placed each sunflower seed carefully, whispering to them like prayers. Now in early December, the last stalk stood 8 feet tall, nowhere near the 12-foot fence they'd replaced, but infinitely more beautiful. Truth didn't need height, it just needed light. "Mama would like the garden," Stellan said quietly. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. She would cry happy tears. He nodded, leaning into me. "I like when everyone comes over. It feels like we're not alone anymore." We weren't. Somewhere in the wreckage of conspiracy and murder and 14 years of lies, we'd built something else. A family made from strangers and grief and the stubborn refusal to let darkness win. The week before, we'd attended the Connecticut State Children's Art Competition ceremony at the Hartford Convention Center. The Boy Behind the Fence, a children's book I'd written and Stellan had illustrated with crayons and colored pencils, had won the state award. The presenter, a silver-haired woman in a formal gown, held up Stellan's drawings. A boy behind iron bars, a garden growing through concrete, a hand reaching through darkness toward light. "The judges were unanimous," she said into the microphone, her voice carrying across an auditorium of 300 people. "This story teaches children about courage, truth, and the families we choose." Stellan sat beside me in the front row, small hands gripping the armrests, eyes wide. "Stellan Whitfield and Larissa Ashford, please come to the stage." We walked up together, my hand on his back, his legs shaking. The award was crystal heavy, engraved with our names. The presenter handed Stellan the microphone. He stared at it, at the crowd, at the impossibility of speaking to hundreds of strangers when words had been stolen from him for so long. Then he looked at me. I nodded. He lifted the microphone and spoke 4 clear words. "This is for Mama." The auditorium went silent. 4 words. He spoke 4 words into that microphone, and the entire room understood what those words cost him. I clutched the 36 bracelets in my purse. I carried them everywhere still and let tears stream down my face. She's here, I thought. Somehow through him she's still here. Now sitting in the garden as December wind rustled the last sunflower petals, I pulled out the award from my bag. Stellan traced his name engraved in the crystal. Dr. Evelyn says I'm doing really good, he said. Really well, I corrected gently. And yes, you are. She says talking about hard things makes them smaller. She's right. He was quiet for a moment, watching a cardinal land on a sunflower stalk. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out colored thread, blue, yellow, red, green. I want to make another bracelet, he said. I watched as his small fingers began to braid. He'd gotten better at it, the movements more confident, the pattern tighter. He worked in silence for 10 minutes while the December sun dipped lower. When he finished, he held it up, the 38th bracelet. He placed it in my palm. I looked at it next to the 36 faded ones on my wrist, the ones from Horizons Academy children, and the 37th he'd made for me at the DCF office. 36 bracelets for a girl who never got to grow up. One for the boy who survived, one for the life we're choosing to live. This one is different, Stellan said quietly. I tied it on my wrist beside the others. How is it different? The old ones are for remembering. This one is for now. Now, not the past, not the grief we'd survived or the monsters we'd defeated. Now, the garden, the family, the words he spoke freely, the future we were building from ashes and sunflower seeds. The Stellan and Nathan Foundation helped another family this week, I told him. That's 112 families since we started. Desmond ran the foundation funded by the restitution from Saskia and Corbin's seized assets, helping widowed families from traffic accidents, turning blood money into something that healed. Mama's helping people even though she's gone, Stellan said. Yes, baby, she is. The last sunflower of the season bent in the December wind petals golden against the twilight. Stellan's hand fit perfectly in mine, now bigger than it was stronger. Ready to go inside? I asked. He nodded, but first he looked back at the garden one more time, at the space where a 12-foot fence had once imprisoned us, at the sunflowers that grew there now drinking light. Some fences are built to keep truth out, I said quietly, but truth like sunlight always finds the gap. And to you listening to my story, remember this. The people closest to you can sometimes be the ones hiding the darkest secrets. Don't make my mistake of ignoring the warnings. Stellan tried to tell me. The signs were there, the fence, the isolation, the control disguised as protection. I dismissed them because I wanted to believe in the life I thought I had. If I could go back, I would listen to my sister's voice, trust my instincts, and ask the hard questions before it was too late. When you face family betrayal, it feels like your world is built on lies. But that family betrayal also reveals who you truly are, stronger than you knew. Truth will always find the light, and justice will come. I believe God put me through this to show me what real family looks like. It's not always blood. Sometimes strangers become family when your family becomes strangers. That's the revenge worth taking, not hatred, but healing. Not destruction, but building something beautiful from the ashes of family revenge and family betrayal. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. Have you ever faced family betrayal or sought your own family revenge? Your story matters. And if you want more true stories about courage and justice, subscribe to Her Revenge. This community is here for you. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. One final note: while this story is based on real experiences, some details have been adjusted for privacy and storytelling. The lesson about truth healing and the families we choose, that's what I hope stays with you. God bless you.